give you the floor briefly, Don. What happened?
Well, football's a funny game. I've always said that's why people pay good money to watch, is they don't know for sure what's going to happen. Sometimes you're pleasantly surprised, and sometimes the surprise is not very pleasant at all. And today was one of those days. A wise old coach by the name of Bill Brazier, our old defensive coordinator from the 80s and the 90s, once said, "You're never as good as you think you are, and you're also never as bad as you think you are either." So right now we have some players that think they're pretty bad. They're not. They're still a good football team. They just didn't show it today. But I think Purdue had a lot to do with that. I thought today was a clinic in terms of how to move the football by forward pass. They really did a great job of throwing and catching the ball. Unusual plan that they were able to pull it off. They actually, in my mind, they clearly had three different quarterbacks with three different plans, and they had them all mapped out. I think those guys that went on the field, those second and third quarterbacks, those plays they ran today are the same ones they practiced all week, and the vast majority of them worked. So it kept us all balanced there. I think it's safe to say they were more comfortable running the quarterback with the second and third team quarterbacks. They didn't want to run with AOC, with O'Connor, but they certainly ran the other two. And that bothered us some too, because Q-Draw once again reared its ugly head. And, the bottom line is we didn't force any turnovers. We couldn't get off the field on defense. They converted so often, even on third and long. And of course, in the end, we turned the ball over 4 times. So thank God for the game, because I should be more specific. The punt return and kick return game, because otherwise we didn't have much of a bright spot today.
Yeah, when we first jumped on, and we're sitting in about an hour, Don, when I first jumped on, that was what I said. I couldn't really scrounge up a place where Iowa won any battles today. And then I thought, well, the kick return battle late in the game, I'm going to call it a battle, but Iowa did produce a couple nice kick returns. Charlie Jones with the punt return and Ivory Kelly Martin with the kick return. Here's me being negative during the game, Don. When that happened, when both of those happened, I turned to my family who was watching the game with, and I said, they're not going to score. They're not going to get in the end zone. It was just one of those days you just feel, and of course that's not a good attitude to have if you're a player, and I'm not saying they had that attitude, but Don, it was just one of those days where nothing worked anywhere on the field offensively, and certainly Spencer had his worst game of the season. How does he bounce back after, boy, there's going to be a lot of the outside noise, especially going into a bye week towards Spencer.
Right. Well, if I were coaching Spencer, I would remind him, you've been getting more credit than you deserve for these last 6 wins. Here's the other side of that coin. You're going to get more blame than you deserve for today's loss. So not that you didn't have a big hand in it, because you did, but it wasn't all your fault. We fell short in too many ways to count today. And again, give a lot of credit to Purdue. You've heard me say before, I said all along, I said, Jeff Brom will have a good plan.
Yes.
He's one of the best offensive minds in the Big Ten, maybe the best.
Yeah.
And sure enough, he did. And of course, the defensive staff is new, and they've done a great job of getting those guys lined up right, and they're playing hard, and they have reason to play, because they're stopping people with some success, and they have reason to be excited about each and every game left on their schedule.
Don, how do you account for these numbers?
Talking about David Bell?
Yeah. How do you account? How do you explain that against this defense?
Well, frankly, David Bell's a great player. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. Such soft hands, has a great idea of how to get open. The one frustration I had, the one thing we could have done, we never really tried to come up with a plan specifically to slow him down. Let me just say it this way. If somebody's beating you over the head with their preferred style of play, then one of the things you need to do is make them play left-handed. You need to take that away from them. And that means you got to come up with a defense that's designed to stop number 3. And if you do that, at least you got a better chance with all those other guys. And there are things we could have done that would have helped. Too many times I made a note, during the game. I said, way too much single coverage on David Bell. And I think as the game wore on, he got in our heads a little bit as pass defenders, to the point where we were playing off of him so far that we couldn't make plays. He was dictating to us more so than we were dictating to him. So one obvious solution is give that one defender out there that happens to be assigned to guard Bell, give him some help. And there are ways you can do that, of course. And I will admit that if you think outside the box and come up with a defense designed to slow one particular guy down, obviously there's a chance during the course of the game that they're going to figure that out and put the ball elsewhere. But I still rather do that than give up 240 yards to one receiver.
And this is Don. He had 200 yards, 2 years ago, and like 130 last year. So there is no question in my mind that right now, and you said it, Brom is maybe the best offensive mind in the Big Ten. Certainly, if I had to pick a coach to devise a game plan, an offensive game plan, and I had any coach in the West, boy, I'd pick Brom every time, because he's a savant with learning how to scheme against what has been the best defense probably in the Big Ten, Don.
Yeah, here's another factor in today's game, and we talked about it a week ago. I was a little bit concerned because they had 2 weeks to get ready for us. And I mentioned that's a little like a bowl preparation, because you have more than a week to put your plan together. And I think that probably had something to do with it today, too. They had more time to work on us than we had to work on them.
Don, here's one observation I had during the game, and as we continued throughout the game, it seemed to me that Iowa actually caught a number of breaks in this game. For instance, Iowa was down towards the goal line. I believe it was second quarter, and Petrus throws what should have been a pick six. Right. That ball was going back to the house, and it's just dropped. So they get away with that. Then you have the missed 31-yard field goal. Now, you could argue, well, Iowa also missed a field goal. The only reason Iowa had a field goal try is because of the dropped pick. Purdue misses the 31-yard field goal, and then you have later in the game this what by inches would have been a touchdown, but he lets go of the ball short of the pylon, and it ends up being a touchback. And that was the right call, Don, but those are a lot of breaks, and Iowa could not capitalize on any of them, including those two big returns by Kelly Martin and by Jones.
Yeah, that was a real break there on the pylon. I said at the time, I said, looks to me like he actually let go of the ball before it hit the pylon, and that's exactly what happened. And at that point, of course, it's a fumble by definition. It was our only turnover today. Yeah. It's a fumble. It's a fumble that goes out of bounds in the end zone as soon as it hits the pylon. Officially, it's in the end zone. And at that point, the only call is touchback. So we were lucky. You're right. We dodged another. It would have been 31-7 with how the game ended up playing out. You would have had to add in 7 more points.
So obviously Iowa ran the ball okay in the first half. Don, what did you see from Tyler Goodson? I thought he played well early, but when you dig yourselves a hole, you kind of have to abandon the run.
Yeah, they just did such a great job. We could not get off the field defensively. And the other side of that coin, of course, is we didn't sustain drives very well on offense. Just to give you an idea about analytics, everybody always enjoys hearing about analytics. There were 3 parameters out of 25. I looked at their last 11 games, which, of course, included last year's Iowa game. And 25 parameters in 11 different games. That's 275 evaluations. I did all those, and there were 3 parameters that stood out. And I'll touch on it now because it's ancient history. The team that had won first quarter scoring had won 9 out of 10 games. There was one tie in there, but 9 out of 10 times the team that won first quarter scoring had won the game, 90% win. As a matter of fact, the only exception happened to be a game, as I recall, it was Purdue winning the first quarter and yet still losing to Notre Dame. That was the one exception. So as I explained it to the coaches, if you win the first quarter, I'll put it this way, any opponent that's won the first quarter against Purdue has won the game every time in all 11 games. Of course, sometimes Purdue won the first quarter, and typically they won the game, the only exception being Notre Dame. So that was one. We needed to win the first quarter. We failed to do that. Secondly, we needed to win on red zone scoring success because that percentage was not 9 out of 10, but it was, as I recall, 8 out of 9. 8 out of 9 games, a couple of ties. 8 out of 9 is 89% win. You need to win on red zone scoring success. And furthermore, a year ago, that's precisely why we lost to Purdue. We both had 5 opportunities in the red zone. They made better with their chances than we did ours. And of course, in a close game, that's the difference in the game. And then number 3, the team that had any edge on turnovers had won 6 out of 7 times. There were 4 ties in there. Matter of fact, we tied them last year on turnovers. And of course, that's 86% win. Here's the bottom line. Purdue today won all 3 of those. I don't even have to go back and check. I know they did. They beat us in the red zone. They beat us on turnovers, and they beat us in first quarter scoring. So we were 0 for 3. Another way to look at it would simply be this. Let's look at all the teams that beat Purdue over the last 2 years. And what parameters do those teams have in common? There were 3. The team, in all cases that beat Purdue, ran for more yards, had more rushing attempts, and had fewer pass attempts. I'm pretty sure that Purdue ran for more yards. I think they had more rushing attempts in the end. And then I think we probably did beat them on fewer passing attempts, but that's not good enough. That's 1 area.
No, and it's hard to not have fewer pass attempts because they have no run game. I mean,
right.
They had one running back on scholarship heading into this game. And it was a kid who'd been hurt. King Doru had been hurt, and everybody else is a walk-on. And I'm just amazed on it. And you talked about red zone scoring success. Purdue was one of the worst teams, maybe the worst team in the Big Ten heading into this game as far as red zone efficiency.
Yeah, primarily because they were ineffective in running the ball.
Right.
Yeah, and they were one-dimensional.
So again, I don't have the red zone numbers specifically in front of me. I'd have to go back and figure it, but certainly they improved in that category today. And Iowa's red zone defense, I don't know what, I'd have to track the games, but Iowa's red zone defense doesn't look all that great right now. We saw Penn State have some success last week in the red zone.
You're right.